for Laurel.
To join? Okay, sure.
I don't know where, she hasn't come in yet.
Okay.
Which city are you based in?
I'm at Chennai.
You're in Chennai. Okay. I'm in Bangalore.
Okay.
Where is Laurel? Hi there, Laurel. How are you?
Hello. Good.
Which
How
part
is everybody?
Hi, Laurel. Good to meet you.
Yeah.
Good to meet you too.
So I'm in Bangalore and Prabha is in Chennai. Which city are you in?
I'm in a little tiny city called Burlington,
Okay.
Ontario, Canada.
Oh, wonderful. Lovely.
So welcome from Canada.
Yeah. So wonderful to have the two of you ladies here. Welcome to the WEF 2020. And our topic this evening is education technology, redesigning the classroom. I feel like going back to the classroom now with all the redesigning that it looks like. So let's start with our lovely speakers, Prabha Dikshit and Laurel Crossley. Let me give a small introduction and then we can start the talk. So should we go with Laurel? Laurel is a Children's Wellness International founder and has 25 years of seeing that families and children are well, mind, body, and spirit. And you incorporate humor and real life experiences in your settings. I like the background. I feel like coming back to your classroom now. And
Thank you.
I see a little piggy and I don't know, lots of other things there that interest one. And you are the founder of Children's Wellness International and also something called LMAO. So I thought it was what I thought it was, but no, it's Laughing My Anxiety Off. And then there's Meditating Munchkins and Crazy for Crystals, Yay, and Yoga. And wow, you've really done so much, in this area. And you also have a web-based TV series. And you've been helping people and families getting over anxiety. Wow. And helping with families in their well-being process. So that's a lot. So tell us more about your journey and, your...
How I ended up here with my toys, with all my toys. Well, I have been working with children online for about 10 years.
Okay.
And when I first started, parents were very hesitant to allow me to offer supports when working with children who were telling me that they worried a lot. They weren't officially diagnosed with anxiety. And so previous to that, many, many years ago, I was teaching people how to use, are you ready? DOS computers.
Oh, yes.
Remember? And
yeah.
Windows, because Windows had just come out. So I had gone from being an adult educator, teaching people how to use the computer, people who'd never used it, to then building it into the work that I do. So when COVID came into the scene, educators here didn't know what to do. That nobody knows what to do when we're teaching our children. So we've gone from a classroom-based learning model, where the teacher is present every day, to something completely new. So there were struggles with the technology use. So the teachers were struggling. The parents didn't know what their role was, and then the students were left sort of pretty much to their own devices to understand. And I'm putting together a conference right now on children's wellness. And it's so interesting because our whole topic has been about how do we support children's learning through our current technology. And so I was considering it and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Because if we look at that structure just on its own, and it's been a theme throughout the conference that I'm putting together right now, the first one is our physiological needs. And so really, when we think about our physiological needs of our students, are they eating do they have, are they safe in their homes? Do they have a home? Those basal needs, many students don't have them typically anyway. If we look at, the international education internationally, there are a lot of students that don't have that. And so, whose responsibility is that? That's what popped into my head this morning. All right, whose responsibility is that? Is it the parent? Is it the educators? Don't know. I think it's independent to each community to come together to assure that those children have those basic physiological needs. The next thing that is so important is the safety and security. And if I look at the technology, many people here were struggling with not knowing how to use the technology. So understanding, getting some training from a parent perspective, as well as an educator perspective. What technology do we need? What's the platform that best services our children and their parents, that has a very short window that we have to understand and learn how to use it, because everybody was using different platforms. There was no consistency. We still had this curriculum we had to get through. How am I going to do that? How am I going to engage my students? So all these compounding situations were occurring simultaneously. So it's really important we figure out what technology works for children. And what works for children isn't the same as what works for adults. Like, we're okay on Zoom,
right?
But children need something a little different. And I had a colleague of mine, he's since put the project to rest, who had created a platform that was video game based. And I got to beta test it. It was wonderful, but he was a few years too soon, because if he had it now, so kids could go in with their little characters. There were boards like blackboards or whiteboards where you could import data into it. It was a beautiful platform. He was ahead of his game. So we put the project aside because, investing in technology can be quite expensive. So really having that superstructure of technology that interests the children, that allows for that playfulness, that allows for that creativity to come out. So the third level is that sense of belonging. And this one's critical, because what I've heard from educators is that if your child has special education requirements, they have some disabilities, oftentimes sitting like this and trying to engage in a classroom is impossible. So how do we tap into those learners who may have these special needs? And of course, what happens, they get in, or they don't even try to get in because it's too overwhelming. And then they disengage from the conversation. So that's another thing that we have to consider is, how do we engage the learners that don't do this? And right now, Canada is toying with a hybrid situation where some students will go part-time to school, back to school as we transition, because we don't start until September. Or do we do a full classroom, part-time? We are all over the place. So this conversation to me is so critical, so we can come together and really figure out what are those next steps to best support our students. And of course, the other really critical piece, I think, is a student or a learner's self-esteem and self-worth in that classroom. So not only do we want to have them engage, how important do they feel? Are they contributing? So one of the recommendations, as I'm thinking about this, is I feel, and I'm sure the two of you are going to help me with this, but we need to look more at project-based learning. That, is a specific project that the students are totally engaged with, that everybody's contributing something to that specific project, whatever that is. And I'd love to see international projects. I would love to see students from around the world coming together on a platform and sharing their wisdom and knowledge. And, that's my vision for the future of having that kind of platform that supports this, where we can scooch off into a nice we can go off into a nice classroom and have a really thoughtful dialogue that is curriculum based, but maybe is student led. So, that I love the idea of student-led, community classrooms. And I think we need to change our classrooms to communities.
Wow.
If we could change the language to communities, I see everybody smiling. I'm like, yay! And we really, so the teachers are more facilitators as opposed to here I'm dispensing my content. And building children into the process, building children into, their own learning. We always do here, we do lots of learning assessments, but we're always testing and evaluating the student. The student isn't given an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm important. And that goes right back to self-esteem and self-worth, because we know when children buy in to whatever they're being shown or demonstrated, then we have academic excellence, because a student feels they're part of something greater than themselves and that they've contributed. So that's kind of where I was starting with today. It's only 7 o'clock in the morning here.
That's so inspiring, my gosh.
So we just have to develop a platform that supports educators, supports parents. We can't forget the parents, because at the end of the day, if we have this type of hybrid situation, how are parents going to be involved? How are their needs being taken care of? What do they need to support their children? Do they need the technology? Do they need internet access? That's still a huge issue here. I think it's a huge issue internationally. If you don't have internet access, how, and we can't go to school, we can't go to traditional school, how are we to attend? How are we to get that content? What if we have to pay for school? Who is going to take care of that? Here, we're very fortunate. We have a public education system. So we do have private, and there are parents that decide to purchase their child's education, but it's public. So everyone has an opportunity to grow and to learn. But how do we do this globally? How do we come together as a global platform to inspire parents, to motivate children, and to really make educators feel confident and comfortable in their skill set?
Wonderful. It's been great talking to you, and very inspiring. And actually, even I think that, like, in a country like India, we have, the private schools where people are affording their children a good education. And now with COVID, children are on their laptops trying to learn through the teachers. It's a new experience for both sides, the teacher and the student. But then there's a huge majority of those who don't have access to either a computer or a smartphone or the internet. And how are they going to be educated in times like this? So that's very relevant what you've been talking about. So now let's move on to our next speaker, Prabha Dikshit. Hi, Prabha, and hello all the way in Chennai from Bangalore. We're not too far away though. So Prabha is the founder and principal of primary schools and primary school India. She has a postgraduate diploma in education leadership. She's a master in business systems from Monash University in Australia, and she has a lot of leaders who've inspired her, like the likes of Jiddu Krishnamurti, and she says even Michelangelo. And she quotes that I'm still learning and always learning. Well, then we're sisters in that purpose, because I love to learn. In fact, even learning how to come onto the platform and moderate these sessions is something new to me. So it's been great fun, and we're always there to learn something new as times change and we have to cope differently. So yeah, she's also a technology consultant. She's an expert in Spanish. She has a diploma in that from Mexico. And you've also, you love, from what I hear, as per your interests, you love reading, and you're also an Indian classical dancer. So that's a lot that you have interests in. So tell us about, your journey.
Sure. So, like you very beautifully summed up, my journey into the work world actually began as a technology consultant.
Right.
So right after my master's, which was really about designing technological systems that would enable businesses I began as a technology consultant, worked in that for more than a decade, dabbling in, in Mumbai, in Chennai, in Melbourne, where I graduated out of my master's program, a couple of years in Mexico, and so on. But education is something I've always been interested in. My family's been interested in, and I just got into it purely because it was an area that was really fascinating. Like when Laurel was speaking, I saw her eyes light up when she was talking about young children and the way they were learning, and that's really something that fascinated me as well. And just going back to my own education system and where I came from, considering how my learning had been, and there were some very good, wonderful things about it. But I remember when I went into my master's program, the first time that I was stepping out of India for education, one of the things that really sort of hit me in my first semester of my master's program was that I hadn't actually learned how to learn. So here I was in a very resource-rich environment with people who were probably facilitators who could, guide me appropriately. I had access to perhaps some of the best databases in the world, the best libraries, but I didn't know how to learn, right? So that was a huge, moment of reckoning for me, if you can call that. And I said, what's going on? I mean, academically, I've been doing well, whether it was in school, I did well in my bachelor's program. So, I was one of those, good students, as we so to speak, in an Indian context. But I was actually struggling in my first semester there. And then of course, it progressively got a little better as I began to try and understand what was going on. And then I began to work, and it was the same thing. What I had studied was not a direct translation in my work environment as well.
Right.
So it was not that whatever I had gone through in my 18 months in my master's program is what had absolutely prepared me in terms of content. What I began to realize even more at that point was that I needed to be very quick in the cycle of learning, unlearning, and relearning, and over and over and over again. And as a technology consultant, when you go from one project to another, you're actually doing something totally different. Your clients are different, your technological platform is different, what is expected out of that business that you're serving is completely different. So the only thing that would keep me going was this cycle. And then anyway, a long story short, cut it to about 12 years later, there was a point when I said, I'm saying goodbye to that. I don't want to be in that rat race and, the constant madness of the corporate world. So I said, okay, I'm going to be doing something else. And then fortunately school came along. It's been almost 10 years now. Next year is our 10th year at Akshara Bowl. So it's just been absolutely joyful working with children, because ultimately I think what happens is to keep that goal in mind, for us to always remember that technology is only an enabler, it's only a catalyst. Ultimately, what is it that students need to learn, and how do they learn so that they become independent, they build resilience, they take ownership for their own learning. And that's the key thing to remember as far as considering educational technologies, because there are so many tools out there today, and ever since the pandemic hit us, we've just been bombarded with information as educators. There have been so many questions, right from very basic ones that are saying, especially in India, it's probably not so true in Canada where Laurel comes from, but in India, there's so much of a debate which is so basic and fundamental in nature, saying, do we even need online education to happen? Then there are very, very nuanced debates that are happening, saying, okay, how do I shift the pedagogy so that online teaching is something that becomes something that children can actually continue to embrace. As adults, we can continue to embrace as both as teachers as well as parents. So there's a lot of question around that, but something that's becoming very, very clear is that we will be having to embrace some form of educational technology, even coming out of the pandemic. It may be a hybrid model like what Laurel was talking about in India. We haven't yet begun talks around that as yet, because we're still very much in the thick of the pandemic enveloping us. But it is going to be there. It's going to stay with us for a little while. So we do need to remember and think about what is finally our educational goal. Because technology, like I said, it's only a catalyst, it's only an enabler. And I think another good idea for us to remember as educators is that we don't need to do anything huge and fancy. We can begin with what we have and then look at in very small incremental steps, how do we build on that? And there's also this very nice distinction between what is technology implementation and technology integration. And I think what we need to remember is that they both are very, very important. Just very quickly, if I can give an example, when we started to introduce tablets with our primary school students for them to be able to access tablets to do some parts of their work, they began to use tablets in order to build their learning portfolios, because that's a very big way in which we do assessments at school. So them learning how to pick their own work, curate that work in the form of a ebook was the form of technology integration, while the actual implementation just referred to deployment of those tablets or those headphones, ensuring that there's Wi-Fi access for everybody, and then so on and so forth. So both of these are going to be very important. And I think it's time as educators, we began to think about where are we, where do we want to go, how can we build those little incremental steps. And very, very importantly, remember that the humanistic element of teaching learning can't be taken out of this at all. So our teachers are at the center of whatever we do. So we need to take them also along in this journey.
Right. So that's been a brilliant, eye-opening session as to how do we deal with, education going forward. And given the situation right now, it kind of hit us in the face, literally. Absolutely. And we're having to deal with it, right away. Because otherwise you have children who are bored sitting at home, not knowing what to do. Parents don't know what to do with them. They don't know what to do with themselves. And the teacher sitting at another end, wondering how is she ever going to, she or he, ever going to complete the portions that are given out to complete the sessions. And, hopefully once the situation improves, children will be back in school, but they would have missed so much. So wonderful learning from both of you lovely ladies, from close and from far from home, but really a lot of interesting thoughts and great work that you all are doing. So and we have a surprise for you. So that is, yeah, Laurel, you have many laurels, but we have another. On behalf of Women Economic Forum, we would like to present you with the iconic Woman Creating a Better World for All award. So congratulations.
Thank you. I think I might cry. Thank you.
So it will be on its way to you soon. And Prabha Dikshit, for you too, we have a surprise, which is on behalf of WEF, we'd like to present to you with the award for Iconic Woman Creating a Better World for All. Congratulations, ladies. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You can have your breakfast now, Laurel.
Oh, I've already eaten it. Thank you.
Okay. We're kind of in between the dinner and yeah. Lovely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.